everybody. According to the meters on my computer, it says that I am live, so we are ready to start a new fun project. My husband was looking up some stats. He said, how many quilts does the average quilter make or actually start in 1 year? And it's about 12. So that's 12 projects a year. I don't know how many you finish, but I try to finish about 6 to 10 quilts a year. So this is another project. Hi, everybody. Let's see who's out there. I see quite a few people starting to jump on. Hi, Robin. Okay, I'm going to share my screen really quick and walk you through the pattern. My name is Yvonne. Welcome to the Jelly Roll Club. This is another one of the Stash Buster series, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You should see this stepping stone pattern. So if you want to know where it's at, you're going to go to the website, www.jellyrollclub.com. You're going to click on stepping stone, and it's going to give you a cutting list and a supply list, right? We're going to need a jelly roll, a full-size jelly roll for this quilt, 60 by 80. And then you need at least 36 low-volume strips for the white sections. You can do this in a different color background if you want to do it in brights or even in like a navy. This would look good in just about any color. You could use a gray as well. All right, so we're going to be making a 1-block quilt. So all of these blocks are the same. We're going to make 48 of them. And let me show you what it takes to make these. These blocks finish to 10.5. So if you want to make this a bigger quilt, this is easy because they finish 10 by 10. If you wanted to make it bigger, super easy to make it bigger. So let me show you what I've got. All right, so I'm going to pull up a single block. Let me go over here where I have my downloads, and I'm going to show you what the block consists of. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to open that up and drag it over to my desktop so you can see it. And so there is the block. Here it is. Ah, there's my desktop. So I'm going to make it great big, and you're going to see what we're doing. So we're going to be cutting 4.5-inch strips of the jelly roll. You need 2 for each block. You also need 3 6.5-inch strips. And of the background, you're going to do 2 6.5, 2 4.5, and 2 2.5-inch strips. And this is it. This is the entire block. We call it stepping stone. So let me show you what that looks like. If you want a continuous line through your quilt, you can add sashing, and you can add a 2.5-inch cornerstone inside those sashings if you wanted to do it that way. But let me show you what we need. All right, does everybody have access to the pattern at this point? So let me squeeze all of this and move it out of the way. All right. All right, so let me move my keyboard out of the way so I can show you guys what's going on. All right, so this is what the finished block looks like. And let me see if I can squeeze in the picture here. So each block has, you're going to see 2 4.5-inch units that go on either end. These are also 4.5-inch units. And then this one in here is a 6.5 with 2 2.5-inch squares on either side. This should finish, if you have an accurate 1/4-inch seam, to 10.5 this way, and then it should finish 10.5 this way. And check your seams and check your jelly roll strips. I have a jelly roll that I bought, and it was all blues. It's really pretty, but it was not a name brand company. And so when I made my test block, I realized that these were just slightly wider than 2.5 inches. So really check your jelly rolls. This is all that I have left from my jelly roll, and this is all that I have left from my white jelly roll. I always kind of keep them together in case I ever have to add more blocks to my quilt, or if I decide that I want to repair it, or if something happens. I usually keep the leftovers from my project until I know everything's done. So because I thought these were 2.5 inches, I didn't check them, I ended up having to do a little compensating. We're going to talk about that. So we're going to start with the first block. And so like I said, you're just going to get 2 squares that are 2.5 by 2.5 from your jelly roll. You're going to use 2 4.5 inches of background, and you're going to need 2 6.5. So 2.5, 4.5, 6.5 of the background, 2 4.5s of the background, and 3 6.5s. Super easy. So if you have scraps, this is a perfect scrap buster. And how this block goes together is in 2 units. You're going to build these units first, and they're identical. So you take a 4.5 and a 6.5, a 6.5 and a 4.5, and you put them together. So you just grab a 6, you match it up with any 4.5, and you stick them together. And I assembly line sew these because it just makes it easier. For the bottom, I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm going to have to get a 6.5. And just grab this one. I'll put that one in the middle. So I'll do a 6.5 and a 4.5 again. So I'm just going to assembly line sew these. I'm going to stack them. This one will have a little one on from the end like this. And then I want to do these 4.5s on top of the other 6.5s, just like this. So I'm going to lay this down just like this. And then I can assembly line sew all of these, and just make sure that your right sides are together. And you can just literally stack this entire thing and put it by your machine. You're just going to have one left over. And so I'm going to stack these, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way across. And let's see if I'm accurate. Hi everybody, let's see who's out there. Can this be done doing a quilt as you go? Absolutely. When you join these logs, and I'm going to show you here in a minute, you can definitely do that. And so let's get over to the machine and let me show you how the strips go, and then I'll show you how you would join these if you were doing a quilt as you go. So let's go over to the sewing machine. And I've got my baby out. I haven't had her out in a while. It's my little vintage featherweight. So we'll see if she's wanting to cooperate, because I oiled her up today and she's been in storage for a little while. If you notice, because this is a vintage machine, I've had to put a little bit of this, let me turn this off. I've had to put a little bit of this Cluck Cluck Sew seam tape, because I want to make sure that I am sewing an accurate 1/4 inch. That's super important. Let me see if this little lady's going to cooperate with me today. And it looks like she's wanting to. There we go. If you own vintage machines, you shouldn't kind of leave them in storage for too long without getting them out and sewing with them. It's just good for your machine. These little motors need regular maintenance. There's a special motor grease that you use in them, and it just keeps everything lubricated, and it keeps your machine from just kind of seizing up on you. So anytime that you have a vintage machine, you should get her out every so often and use her so that she doesn't get all yucky on you. All right. This little gal is a 70-year-old machine, and she runs pretty good for a 70-year-old lady. All right, so once you have all of that and you've run it through your machine, you're going to sew the last strip. And so I'm going to go through here, get my scissors out, and you're going to sew the very last piece to this middle section. So I have all of these, and then I'm going to look for the one that has a 2.5 inch strip, which is this one. And I'm going to sew that last little bit on there. And you should be able to keep your blocks together. If you want a certain order on all of your blocks, then you can keep them together like this, all strung together. And that way you won't have to worry about searching which bits go with which. But you can sew this entire quilt top literally in one day. It only took me about 10 minutes to do one block. And I went ahead and I pre-cut my entire jelly roll. I usually do that whenever I have a project like this. So let me show you what I've got. And so I'm going to cut this. So if I were using a quilt as you go method for this, I would cut a 12-inch square for the back of this. And I would go ahead and cut an 11-inch piece of batting just to make sure that you were able to sew these and quilt them at the same time. And so this is the beauty of this block, is they can be sewn and quilted. Now, for all of these, I'm going to press them the same way, which is to the dark. So I'm just going to flip the seam towards the dark, and I'm going to pinch it like this, and then I'm going to check to see if this is 10.5 inches. If this is 10.5 inches, then my 1/4 inch seam is accurate. And so I always just kind of keep a ruler around, and that looks like that's 10.5 inches. So that's pretty accurate. And what I don't want to do is distort and stretch this, so I'm just going to give her a press without stretching her too much. Commercial jelly rolls have a lot of stretch, so if you want to spray starch your strips before you get started, that's great. So as long as I have an accurate 1/4 inch seam on my machine, and I've tested mine, then I'm going to just take all of these and I'm going to press them towards the dark. So you're going to see me doing that. And you're going to press towards the dark, just like that. How many of you guys are going to jump in and try to make this quilt? I think you're going to be really excited. This has lots of optional layouts, and I'm going to show you in a minute what that might look like. So let me just go right here. All right, so now that I have all of those, look at how quickly that went. So now that I have all of those pressed towards the dark, I'm going to start laying them out, and you could make a whole stack. If you know that you're going to need a whole bunch of these, then you can just cut them out like I did and put them in a little basket. And whenever I have a project like this, I just take everything, I cut it in a basket, and I set it next to my sewing machine, because I know that anytime that I have even 15 minutes to spare, I could come into my sewing room, sew these up, and then I will have a quilt in literally just a few days. I work full time, so anytime that I can make a project like this, I really do. This is perfect for any scrappy pile that you have left. They don't even have to be the same color. Do you see these? These are different, so it doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to start with a 4.5 inch strip at the top, and then I'm going to add, let me see, I'm going to balance these colors. Why does it feel like I'm short one? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. No, that's correct. I just need to flip this one over. All right, so this one goes in the middle. So you have a 4.5 here, a 6.5 here, so that it's stepping down like stairs. Then the 6.5 in the middle, and it just goes down, which is why I called it stepping stones, because you're just stepping down. And then this one goes right here, which is the final step, and then this one goes right over here. And so I want, oops, wrong. That one goes that way. And so my stairs go like this. And then the opposite direction, the steps go this way. Boop, boop. So I want my steps going up and my steps going down. So as long as you have this middle one there, and then you have 2 4s on the end and 2 6s in the middle, then this is correct. Then you're just going to lay these over, and you're going to sew them. And if my 1/4 inch is exact, then these should match, and these should be 10.5 inches, and I can just kind of measure that. And that's 10.5. That's 10.5. That's 10.5. And that's 10.5. And I always check. I'm going to leave this one out, and I'm going to assembly line sew these together. So now I know that I need a 1/4 inch. Make sure I'm sewing on the correct side. I usually pin. I'm a hardcore pinner, but I usually either clip or pin on the side that I'm sewing. I'm going to take these over to the machine, and I'm going to sew on one side. And I'm going to measure these, because these are a tiny bit wider than 2.5 inches. And you can see these, the teeth is outside of the 2.5 inch. So I'm going to line up the little sawtooth, this one here. These little teeth are wider than 2.5 inches. So on my, I'm going to have to make sure that I use a generous 1/4 inch rather than a scant. I'll check it one more time. And now I'm going to go sew these over at my machine. Super, super fast. So I'm going to come back over here and let this little lady handle her business. Let's see how she does. Once that little motor gets warmed up, she really goes. When you are sewing strips together, every little 1/16 of an inch or so really matters. So you really have to kind of keep track of where those seams are aligned. If you sew with an accurate 1/4 inch seam, this entire block can be done without any trimming. So I'm going to go here now. And now I just need to add, I'm going to press these open, and I need to add my centerpiece. Now, if you were doing quilt as you go, you would start on one side of this block and you would attach it to the entire thing one strip at a time. I love featherweights as well. You can find one in great condition. I've taken care of this little lady for a while. All right, so I'm going to press all of mine in the same direction. So I'm just going to take, and I'm going to finger press this because it keeps my block from being distorted. So you can set your seam. And then you're just going to take, while it's warm, and you're just going to run your finger along there. And by doing that, you don't distort that seam because you don't want your block to be all wavy. And you're going to do the same thing to the other block. And see how it has the 4 inch on the bottom. I want all of these seams to go the same way because when I get ready to put this together, I'll be able to alternate the blocks. See, all of these are going up, so I'll be able to put every other block, and then these are going down. So then when I line these up like this, side by side, these will nest at all of these intersections, and I'll be able to put my blocks together. So I'm going to take this one, and these are all going up. Like that one. So I'm just going to take my finger, run the little pads of your fingers across there so you don't get any little rumples in there. And then you make it flat. And quilting is a hobby where you have to kind of learn that you can't like scrub your blocks back and forth. Then here's the next one. I'm going to lay that one right on top. And look, my 1/4 inch is accurate because these line right up without any trimming. So if you do this correctly, you don't have to trim at all. And I love blocks where I don't have to trim. So let me sew this one up. Like I said, this is a great little scrap buster, so you can get all of those leftover bits from all your other projects. You don't even need to be too fussy about it. If you have a lot of leftover purples, it would look good with a yellow background. If you have a lot of greens or reds, that would look good together to make like a holiday quilt. If you want to start working on a fall quilt, you can use oranges, browns, yellows, and golds together. So you can change the look of this quilt by literally just changing the color scheme. If you wanted to do a springy quilt, you can do pastels, a baby quilt. You decide, because this one is super, super flexible. All right, so let's see this one. This one, my daughter is renovating her basement, and her color scheme in her basement is these beautiful shades of blue and gray. And so this one is going to be a birthday gift for my daughter. And she's going to get to use that in her basement. And so there's the 2 halves of the block. And I'm just going to lay this on top. And just like that, look at how quickly this block goes together. And let me switch it over to the baby machine again. I don't even have to pin because there's no seams to match. So for those of you who are newer quilters, this is a great project because you're just practicing that accurate 1/4 inch seam. And you're giving it a sew just like that. All right. I wish they made new sewing machines as accurate as they make these little vintage ladies. All right. All righty. Let me show you what I've got. Ta-da! So this is my last seam here because this is the middle one. And all of these are now going up. And if I did my job, this should measure 10.5 inches from top to bottom. Now, because this is already stitched together, if I wanted to starch this block, what I could do is I could spray it and set it to the side and then press it once it is dry. Because what you don't want is you don't want to get shrinkage. People do that all the time. They will press their blocks while they're wet and then they end up with shrinkage. So let's measure this block and I'll tell you how much it measures. So this is a ruler, a big ruler here, and 10.5 inches. Let me measure, make sure it's lined up with these edges. And that is the 10.5 inch line. And guess what? This one is exactly 10.5 inches. Now it's got a tiny bit of a wobble, but I'm not too worried about that. Most of these are really, really close to being accurate. And so I might kind of nibble this right here. So all that I would trim off of there is a little tiny sliver off the top. But other than that, this is the block. Look at how easy that is. And then you would take this. If I wanted to, I could stack them all like this and make like a zigzag. So these would be going diagonal. So let me show you the image. So I'm going to go up here to the website and I'm going to show you. I'm going to put this on the other screen. So let me move this over. Let me show you what that looks like. So I have a couple of alternatives that you could use. So if you wanted to take this stepping stone quilt and you wanted to do diagonals like I have, you would just put them like this. It would look like streaks of lightning. You could also do it in a chevron pattern. So if you wanted them to go up and down, you could do it in a chevron pattern, or if you really wanted to, you could make it look like rings. So if you wanted it to look like big rings and you wanted to applique something in the middle like hearts, you could turn this into a really beautiful wedding quilt. So like I said, the blocks are 10.5 inches, easy to adjust to make it bigger or smaller. But this is it, friends. That is the whole quilt. Nothing else to do. Make yourself a whole stack of stepping stone blocks. I think these are going to be really pretty. I like how they look. And so you go out there and make yourself a big pile of stepping stone blocks. And I'm probably going to put mine like this because that's what makes that big circle. And so when I'm done, you can just turn them this direction and then put two here at the bottom mirror images, and that is it. So this one is super easy. Super, super easy. So let me know if you're going to make one of these. I hope that you enjoyed this super easy scrap buster. Get out there and make yourself a bunch of stepping stone blocks. Super fun, super easy. And then when you are finished, share the quilt with me on social media and put Jelly Roll Club Stepping Stone. And we're going to make ourselves a whole bunch of new quilts this way. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful week. I will see you next Sunday for another installment of the Fruits of the Spirit that's behind me. So if you haven't seen it, the Fruits of the Spirit that I continue to work on, we have another one next week. And I will also share the April pillow of the month. You're going to like it. I'm working on 2 options for you, and it's going to smell like spring. So you guys have a wonderful week. I hope that you will make a whole stack of these super easy blocks, and I will be posting progress on my page. And I do like the ring layout as well. So you guys are going to see lots of pictures on my Facebook page and on the YouTube channel. All right, everybody, get out there and make yourself a whole bunch of beautiful blocks, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye, everybody. Have a good one. Thank you for stopping by. Give it a thumbs up and share the channel. Thank you. Thanks a million.